And then the main thing today that I'm excited about, and I think we'll kind of just dive into it. It's good to have friends on the show. I'm going to have Bonzo Finance on the show, and we've got Gaurang as well joining, and Brady will be stopping by, I believe, as well. But Bonzo Finance is something that's on the top of my mind right now, because when we look at the Hedera ecosystem, DeFi, all those different types of things, over the last year, I've had so many conversations with like so many amazing builders in the space. And for a long time, people have been talking about, borrowing, lending, and the real importance of that. And the reality is that there's a lot of value on this network. Even though it may feel, comparatively smaller to other networks, of course you have to create more value. There has to be more projects. There has to be more tokens, all these different types of things, more investors. But also it's about like unlocking the value that's already here, making it more usable. And that's where borrowing and lending comes in, and also creating more opportunities for people to, get yield on this network and all those types of things. All those checking those boxes that make things attractive for investors coming into the Web3 space. But more than happy to welcome to the show, Gaurang to the show. I listened to your spaces that you had, the Bonzo Finance spaces you had with Brady last week. It was awesome. Hope you're doing well, and welcome. It's great to finally chat with you.
Hey. Nice to be here. Thanks for inviting us. Brady should be joining in a few minutes, but I can start in the meanwhile.
Good stuff.
Thanks for having us.
Right on. Yeah. And I mean, what I would say is, just while we give a moment and wait for Brady, I mean, I heard you speaking on the spaces with Brady, talking about Bonzo Finance. I've had Brady on the show many times, real kind of OG in the space, a long-term, as we call it, HBAR barium. But yourself, hearing you speak about Bonzo Finance, hearing you speak about the ecosystem, clearly, you know a lot about the Hedera ecosystem, but I've never really, been aware of your existence, and I was just so cool to kind of like hear you speaking about things. So maybe, give a minute here and kind of a little introduction. More so for myself, I'm very curious as kind of like how you got into Hedera, kind of how long you've been in the ecosystem, and it'd be awesome to get a little bit of intro from you.
Absolutely. Thanks for that. I'm Gaurang, and I've been in the blockchain space since about 2016. And unlike a few other blockchain OGs, I first got into the Ethereum ecosystem before I got into Bitcoin. A lot of people that I know first bought their Bitcoin and then got into Ethereum, but it was the opposite for me. And that's because I'm software developer by background. So I've been working in software companies, doing my own startups since 2013, almost. So I was based in Singapore at that time, and the reason I got into the whole blockchain ecosystem because I was enamored by the concept of writing smart contracts on the blockchain. So the ability to write smart contracts, the ability to write code that could actually handle your real money, I think that was really fascinating for me, right? So when I first heard about blockchain, when I first heard about Ethereum and smart contracts, I was like, whoa, that's awesome. That's how I got into the Ethereum ecosystem in Singapore. And after that, when Hedera was launched, I have been following Hedera since then, Hedera Hashgraph. And I've been on the sidelines in this Hedera ecosystem. So my day job until now has been running a blockchain development company. So in this blockchain development company, we have worked on multiple blockchain projects over the last 7 years. So we have built NFT marketplaces. We have built some DeFi apps. We have built Web3 games, and we have also built like decentralized advertising networks. That's how like I have a lot of experience in the space in building products and building dApps on the blockchain. And like I have worked on multiple networks. I worked on Ethereum. I worked on Polygon, on RSK, which is like the Bitcoin EVM network. And I know Brady since last year, actually. So, in fact, actually, I had interviewed at Swirls Labs last year, and
Okay.
I kind of got an offer from them, but I couldn't join because of some visa issues at the time.
Gotcha.
But yeah, since then I know Brady, and I know another person from the Hedera ecosystem called Thamim. So he's on one of the governing council, companies,
Right.
LSE, which is a London university. He actually sits on the governing council on their behalf. So through Thamim, I have known the ecosystem very well. And recently, when Brady was kind of thinking of launching Bonzo Finance, Thamim introduced me to Brady, and then we got talking. And as you were saying earlier, I really understood that this is like a big missing piece in the Hedera ecosystem, right?
Yeah.
And as you know, Hedera ecosystem, it's like maturing, right? You have Saucer Swap, which is one of the biggest DEX on the ecosystem. But what's missing are the other Lego blocks from the DeFi ecosystem, right? So if you look at any upcoming blockchain ecosystem, for example, you take an example of Blast, right? So Blast launched like 2-3 weeks ago, and now they have these building blocks for the DeFi ecosystem, and all those building blocks, they kind of follow the same path if you think about it. So you start with the dexes, so that you can do on-chain swaps in a P2P manner. Then you have lending protocols. Then you have perp exchanges. So yeah, similarly, we think that Hedera ecosystem has to evolve if it has to become bigger, and we already have a DEX. So like the next logical piece of the puzzle was a lending protocol. And when I was talking to Brady, I'm like, yeah, this just makes sense. Like it's a nice idea. It's a simple idea, and it has to work. Like the ecosystem needs this, right? Yeah.
That's great. And I think that what you touch on is, I think, something that, an approach that a lot of successful projects take, which is really looking for problems and providing some of those solutions. And the obvious question, I think that the question that's on a lot of people's minds when it comes to, these types of projects coming into Hedera and stuff is it's, besides, working with Brady and stuff, like what for you, I guess more so, understanding all the ecosystems out there, working on Ethereum, as you said, working on Polygon, all of these, arguably more established ecosystems that have, let's say, like more liquidity or more products or more users. Why choose Hedera, right? Which has, a smaller user base and smaller resources comparatively to other networks. Why lean into Hedera? Like, is it because, there's that opportunity for growth, or because there's a major problem that has to be solved, or is there more to that? I'm just curious, especially with something, this exciting in the ecosystem. Why go full in on Hedera?
Yeah, so we think that this is the right time to do this. So until now, as I said, we have had only Saucer Swap, which was one of the biggest dexes. But to build like a lending protocol, the other pieces weren't there. But like recently with the launch of Supra Oracles on Hedera, I think it's the right time to build this kind of a network on Hedera. And why Hedera? The simple answer to that is like there's an opportunity. There's a glaring problem, not a problem. There's a glaring like piece of the puzzle that we can fit into, and I think that's a massive opportunity. So as an entrepreneur, as a builder, I have always looked at networks. I have always looked at companies and opportunities where I can get in early. Like that's why I got into Ethereum very early. Like I don't want to get into a system where you have like $100 billion of TVL. Then you don't have any
Right.
room for growth, right? But if you look at Hedera is at a great moment right now, right? So you have 150 million TVL around that, right? And there's just room to grow. We can easily reach like 1 billion TVL in this cycle, I think. There's like, yeah, I don't want to speculate.
Okay, that
no
gets me
financial advice,
excited,
but
though. You pull
I
out the
think
big B word,
there's a potential to go like 8x from here. Just with Saucer Swap, I think they are going to grow from here, right? Like just alone, they can take us like 2x, 3x from here.
Sure.
Yeah, so I think there's massive opportunity here, definitely.
That's huge. And I agree with you. And I think you touched on something important there, which is, again, I think a real quality of builders. And I think why I'm really interested in Bonzo Finance is, approaching this network with the right attitude. And I think that sometimes people go, oh, it's a new network and the technology is really cool and there's a lot of opportunity here. And then there's kind of like this, and they don't really kind of understand some of the shortcomings of Hedera sometimes. And then there's like this middle camp, which is like, not like looking for like what's the total addressable market or getting disappointed in Hedera or giving up on Hedera, right? And then there's the third camp, which I feel you guys kind of fall in, which is like, hey, we're creating the total addressable market, and there is a lot of opportunity here. There is risk reward. And so I think it's like if you come at it with the right approach into a network like this, you can have that success. But if you don't understand that you're going to have a little bit of that short-term pain, that short-term risk to potentially, as you said, kind of ride that wave, and really kind of embrace the timing of everything. I think that's key. And correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that, because you're doing a borrowing and lending protocol, obviously oracles are really, really important.
Oh
And I
yeah.
noticed, that you guys, I saw Brady just popped up here, but, I had a chance to chat with Brady in Denver, and he was telling me about Bonzo, and it was right at the time where, Super Oracle was coming into Hedera. And also the Pyth or Pith network or whatever, like were oracles really the last key piece for Bonzo Finance to like wake up and start working on your roadmap? Was oracles really a key thing you guys were waiting on Hedera?
It wasn't really like we were waiting on it, but like when we saw it coming and like when Brady was doing some research, like we felt that this is the right time, and
Right.
not just with the technology, like as you said, with the total TVL, with the addressable market that we can grow, and as you said, like it's not just about looking at the current market size. I think it's about growing the market together.
Yes.
Like as ecosystem participants, we have the ability and we have the chance to actually grow this market. And the market will grow in two ways. Like so, let's just take a simple example, right? So as Bonzo Finance, if we want to get that TVL when we launch, there are two ways of doing it. One is you get it from the existing ecosystem in Hedera, right? People who haven't yet gone on Saucer Swap, they're not using Saucer Swap, right? So people who are like sitting idle with their assets. Or the second way is to actually get more retail users in the ecosystem. And I think the HBAR Foundation, Swords Labs, and all these big players, they are actually making efforts to get more retail into the whole ecosystem itself, right? So, and with a product like Bonzo Finance, we have that opportunity to grow that whole pie. It's not about like taking liquidity from someone else and then being
Right.
predatory. Like I think it's about growing the whole pie together. I think that's very important for us. Yeah, the collaboration aspect of things.
Love that. Brady, good to see you. I'd give an intro for Brady, but I mean, if folks in the Hedera ecosystem don't know Brady at this point, I mean, what are you doing? But
You need to know the radio.
right, I mean, like I was like, this is Brady, and I was like, there's no point. I was just gonna say, like, Brady, I was just kind of touching with, Gaurang about the history of Bonzo Finance, him mentioning that kind of like, the journey kind of getting there, getting connected with you. Potentially he might have worked at Swirlds Labs and then made another pivot and, ran a software company, all these different types of things. And I was curious at it from your side, um, right as we're kind of getting close to you guys executing on your roadmap and going live, like taking a minute here to kind of explore, like, where did Bonzo Finance start? Like from your perspective, Brady, like what was some of the factors that made you decide, yes, we need to be the ones to, build this protocol? What kind of did that journey look like over the last year or so, as kind of Grong was saying?
Yeah, no doubt. Appreciate the question. And then, for anybody who I haven't met, my name is Brady. I used to work at Hedera and Swirlds Labs for about 5.5 years, and after that time, decided I wanted to be on the other side of the fence, supporting the ecosystem, and specifically, my interests really lie in the retail ecosystem on Hedera, especially seeing how rapidly that's grown over the past 2 years or so. Um, and so left Hedera maybe 4 months ago now, um, and knew that I wanted to try and start something that contributes to that ecosystem, and spent a good amount of time trying to sort of research and understand where the gaps are that exist in the DeFi ecosystem today. Ran through a couple random kind of crazy ideas, infrastructure ideas and whatnot, and then started really looking at, again, the DeFi ecosystem and the trajectory that it's on, the liquidity that's being made available, the HTS token-based projects, and then so economic aspects of it, and then to Gaurang's point, also the technical aspects of it. So as I was departing, was aware that we had oracles that were starting to become online and would be soon announced. Oracles are a critical component of safe lending and borrowing. We never had that before. Prior to that, didn't have JSON RPC relay to be able to do development environments and easily port over existing EVM-based protocols like Aave, which Bonzo is based on. And so in sort of aggregating all of that research and looking at the gaps and looking at the organic sort of growth of other DeFi ecosystems, lending and borrowing seemed kind of like a no-brainer. DEXs come on first, creates a lot of liquidity. Lending and borrowing typically comes next in that sort of order of operations. And then, after that, you're looking at things like perpetuals and futures and other types of more complex DeFi types of transactions that we're, at some point the ecosystem is going to need to enter into as well. So, Gaurang and I were reconnected from T of London School of Economics. He sat on the governing council for a while. T and I have been pretty close for a couple of years now. And Gaurang and T have known each other for a while as well, with both of them based in London. So T had connected us, and Gaurang and I had chatted for like over a week, sort of talking about the opportunity and sort of what I was imagining with Bonzo and the vision and the ecosystem. And then Gaurang very thankfully made the decision to jump into this. And so, we hit the ground running and have been going since then. I'm out in London right now, actually visiting him for a week, and we're doing a bunch of strategy work and making a lot of great progress. Yeah, so it's been wonderful. I felt like I was looking for that like needle in a haystack person, and serendipitously we were able to find each other. So it's been really great.
Right on. That's great. I think you guys make a good team. That's why I reached out to Gaurang after, because I want to kind of continue the convo on some of the things that you guys talked about on your first spaces. So I would say, like, if there's any gaps that people want to fill in knowledge on kind of what Bonzo Finance is about, like, listen to that spaces that they did, because they really covered a lot of ground on that spaces. And it's kind of, as I was listening to the recording, I was like, I got to get this guy on my show, because it's really exciting. It feels like a whole new thing coming to Hedera, and correct me if I'm wrong, Brady, but like, it feels like because the Hedera ecosystem is so specific and so, for lack of a better word, I don't want to say maxi, but like, a lot of people in Hedera, their first foray into crypto was Hedera. So the concept of borrowing and lending and all the different things about it might be a little bit more foreign to a lot of people. Do you kind of get that as well in this space of like, this is a really fresh thing for a lot of people?
Absolutely. Yeah. And we actually did like a little survey from the Bonzo Finance handle, sort of polling whether people in the Hedera retail ecosystem have had experience with lending and borrowing on other protocols, and overwhelmingly people haven't. And it was intuition sort of said that was the case, especially looking historically again with Saucer Swap. They did an amazing job educating all of the retail users on Hedera who this was their sort of first foray into crypto and their first home-based ecosystem. And so, we anticipate needing to do the same type of education, tutorials, providing information sort of generically about various strategies related to this. Obviously, not financial advice, but just sort of agnostic education about what you can do with borrowed assets. And and so, yeah, we're really hoping to sort of be the home base for that, for the ecosystem, and try to support the retail community and institutional community as well as much as possible.
Love it.
Just to add on to that point about the education and like using these protocols for the first time, so for example, on Ethereum back in the days like 2018, 19, 20, that era, like when Uniswap came out first, right? When you used Uniswap for the first time, or in case of Hedera, Saucer Swap for the first time, it's amazing, right? You have that eureka moment, like, oh, this is how easy it can be, right? Like you have
Yeah.
used Coinbase, you have used Binance, but then when you use something like Uniswap or Saucer Swap, it's just amazing. It's just a different thing that you're doing, and that you just fall in love with that, right? And same thing with Aave or Compound. Like this is just a whole new take on things. Like it's nothing new, right? Getting loans, borrowing, it's not new, but doing it in this way on the blockchain, that's like a complete paradigm shift, I think. And I think when people get to experience that, and that's why we want to launch on the testnet very soon, because when people get to experience that, when people get to play with that, when people get their hands on that, I think they're just going to, it's just going to click with them. We want to make it so easy for them that like it's just intuitive, they don't need any tutorials or anything. Yeah.
That's a great, probably one of the best strategies, especially in this space, is, how quickly can we let somebody have a positive experience with something new? Those kinds of moments that, like, as you're describing, is like, I think really where the magic happens. And I think that strategy is really the backbone of Saucer Swap's approach. And so I think I like that you guys are borrowing from that. And I think on the education side, I want to talk a little bit about kind of what you guys are building. I had some essentially like follow-up questions from your spaces that you did, but I guess like maybe more broadly, like, self-admittedly for from myself, it's like, I haven't really participated a ton in borrowing and lending on crypto. And it's, for me, I'm curious to know, like, what are some common misconceptions of borrowing and lending, and maybe what are some useful info that can shed some light on those things? I mean, obviously it's like, oh, it's really high risk, or what if you don't trust the person, or these kind of, dumb questions, or, but from what you guys have experienced in both of your careers and experiences, with this kind of stuff on all sorts of networks, like what are some of those common, misconceptions, and is there any way you can kind of like shed some light on some of those things?
Sure, yeah. Maybe I can go first and Brady can
go for it. First to unmute gets to answer the question. That's how it works.
Yeah. So the first thing here is in lending and borrowing on the blockchain, specifically with Aave or Compound, what you're getting is not really a loan per se, right? So, for example, if you want to get like a bachelor's degree in the US or a master's degree, you go out and get an educational loan, right? So, in that case, you're getting money from a bank or some other financial institution, but you're not putting any collateral against it, right? There might be some, your credit score and all those things, but you're not really putting money to get money. But in case of Aave, what happens is you have to collateralize, or you have to deposit one asset to get or borrow another asset, and you can't borrow the same amount. So, for example, if you deposit HBAR tokens, which are worth $1,000, so let's say at 10 cents they are like 10,000 HBAR tokens. You can, let's say, borrow SOS tokens or Galaxy tokens or HBARX tokens only up to a certain threshold. And in our case, that threshold might be, I don't know, 60-70%. So let's say you deposit tokens worth $1,000. You can only borrow other tokens with up to $600 or $700. So it's not like a loan like your real life, in this case, you're kind of leveraging the assets. Again, no financial advice. You shouldn't do this if you don't want to, or if you don't really understand. But the thing is, when you deposit an asset and when you borrow some other asset, what you're doing is you're trying to get an exposure on the new asset without selling your first asset. So let's take an example. You are long on HBAR. You think HBAR is going to go 10x from here. It might not. You think no financial advice. It's not about 10x and all that. It's like you believe in HBAR, you don't want to sell your HBAR, for example, right? But at the same time, you want to get exposure to some other assets, or you need some liquidity. You want to borrow some stable coins without selling your HBAR. So what you can do is you deposit the HBAR and you borrow the stable coins against that up to a certain amount, as I said, up to $600 or $700 in that case. Now you can do anything with these stable coins or with your source tokens. You can do anything. Or in the other case, again, no financial advice. I want to keep repeating that. Let's say you deposit HBAR worth $1,000, you borrow source tokens worth $600, but you think that in comparison with HBAR, source are going to be at a much higher value in the next 6 months. So these are some of the use cases for lending and borrowing on blockchain. And as I said, the protocol, the Aave protocol, which we are working, it makes it really easy for this to take place on the blockchain. Yeah, Brady, you want to add anything else to this?
Yeah, no, I thought that was a great explanation, and sort of foundationally the mechanics of lending and borrowing, and then sort of some reasons why someone might want to do that. And I think what this also opens up opportunities for in the ecosystem is the utility of these token-based projects that are on Hedera. People can get greater exposure to the utility of them related to the native asset of them. And so what I mean by that is, and again, we keep saying not financial advice. This is absolutely not financial advice. But when we sort of think through these different ideas of reasons why people could do it, look at karate combat, for example. When you have karate tokens, you go into the karate combat application. You've got your karate tokens in your wallet. The utility of that application with the karate tokens, outside of just governance with those tokens, is the ability to place I guess they're not bets because you can't lose, at least right now, but they're sort of gestures of sort of support for a certain fighter winning versus another fighter, and you get to earn tokens that way. And so if you imagine, you're big into karate combat, you see that there's one fighter that you particularly like and you believe in, and you want to really boost your bet. And so you could, again, take HBAR, deposit it, be able to lend or borrow out karate tokens and use that as part of the utility of the karate combat platform. And if you sort of take that example and expand out to other applications on Hedera that are token based, there's more examples of utility that exists for those tokens where you can sort of double down on your sort of support for utilizing that. So I think foundationally, lending and borrowing is also a way to help boost the utilization of these applications on Hedera, which is really important. We want active users. We want people utilizing these applications and these protocols, and we're sort of here in support of that as well. Obviously, with the risk that everyone individually is comfortable with, but it opens up the door for something new that was not previously available in the Hedera ecosystem.
Right. And just to add on to that, just one last point here is like these kind of financial primitives, these kind of financial products, I would say, or ways of doing things are readily available to institutions and traders at these big companies, big firms.
Right.
But it hasn't been available to retail until now. Like you can't go and do this with your TradFi, banks or mortgage or lender, But now with the power of blockchain, you can do this for $10, for $100, for $1,000, like very small amounts. But if you go to like a TradFi system, you need millions of dollars to even kind of get access to these products. And I think that's the real power of blockchain. That's why I've been in blockchain for the last 7-8 years, and that's why we all believe in blockchain. Yeah.
Right. Okay. So bringing up institutions, TradFi, that's I think one of the key, potential misconceptions. I think that again, putting myself in the shoes of like, let's say like a Mike Maloney precious metal Hedera HBAR 2019, holder or whatever, not really I see Brady doing the laughing emoji. Not really up to speed on some of this stuff. And so I think of maybe asking you a question in regards to like, when it comes to borrowing money or taking on leverage, it's like, with established systems, you have trust, maybe you have some kind of form of insurance, all these different things with, traditional finance system, people want to borrow things. And then, maybe this kind of like borrowing, lending, smart contract kind of stuff sounds more risky. Like what would happen if, the price changed drastically on some of these assets, or what if, one of these loans or defaulted or whatever it could be. Like, of course, I think a lot of people are going to kind of start asking some of those questions. And I was curious, like specifically on that kind of train of thinking, from your guys' perspective, like how would you best kind of deal with some of those questions, maybe misconceptions or criticisms on borrowing and lending in crypto?
Yeah, no, these are not misconceptions, and I think we are going to make that clear in all our marketing materials, all our websites and everything. This is extremely risky, and there are risks at multiple levels here. So the first one is the smart contract risk, right? So there's always a risk that the smart contract might get hacked. We are going to do an audit. We won't deploy contracts that are not audited. So we are actually talking to some auditors already. The thing is, like, we will try our best to make it safe and secure, but we can't guarantee that there would be no hacks. There can be hacks. That's number one. Second is within the smart contracts itself, there's like multiple moving pieces, multiple things. So one example is with the oracles. So as you said, the price of the collateral asset, the price of the assets that you deposit itself might go down. That's one risk at the market level. But even at the technical level, there's a risk that, again, I'm not saying this would happen, but with Supra oracles, they might fail. There might be a problem with Supra oracles, for example. And they would send us the wrong price or zero, and then that could trigger some liquidations. So there are risks here. What we are trying to do is, as I said, we'll make sure the contracts are as safe as possible. I'm not saying it's unhackable. No, it's not. We'll make sure it's as safe. But second is even with the way people lend and borrow, we want to make sure that there's a big buffer in this case. So in our case, the loan to value ratio will be quite low. It will be so we're going to start with like safety in our mind. Like let's say you deposit tokens worth $1,000, you won't be able to borrow tokens worth 900 or 950.
Gotcha.
That's too risky, even with HBAR, for example. But yeah, so we will make sure that we start in a very safe manner. People might get pissed off that they can only borrow up to, let's say, $500 or $400, but that's okay. We start slow, we start in a safe manner, and then we can ramp it up as the ecosystem matures, as people know what to do and how to do these things. Yeah, so these are 2 points from a technical perspective from my side. Brady?
Yeah, those are great points. And I mean, it is inherently risky. I think lending and borrowing relative to sort of different categories of DeFi, we sort of recognize that inherent risk, and we want to do our best to mitigate that risk for, as Gaurang mentioned, at the protocol level. Second, at the user level, so retail users sort of being able to perform these types of transactions with safety in mind, and being very aware of those risks that they would be potentially setting themselves up for. And that's, including things in the UI UX that sort of give them an anticipation of, what a transaction might do prior to them performing it. Like there's what's called like a health factor. And a health factor is based on how much you have collateralized or supplied in liquidity, and how much you are borrowing against that collateral. And as that ratio changes, you have a health factor associated with it. And so, prior, for example, to borrowing more funds out of the collateral you've supplied based on the amount that you're selecting, it gives you an idea of, hey, this is going to impact your health factor by this much. This is sort of that level of risk that you're taking on. And then additionally, simulations that would help you sort of understand sort of how much you're willing to take on risk-wise. And then risk for the ecosystem as well, the DeFi ecosystem. When you start to enable this type of financial transaction, there's so many moving parts that are happening that are ecosystem wide versus just sort of in silo on Bonzo. When people have access to larger amounts of liquidity and they can, use those assets, for example, to like trade on Saucer Swap and affect the liquidity pools there, or other applications in the ecosystem. You want to try and do as much as possible to mitigate outsized impacts at the ecosystem level and ensure that we retain a healthy DeFi ecosystem. And so, various things that we can try to do to ensure that that's the case. And then let's see what else. Yeah, I think a big portion of it is just ensuring that people are very sort of supported throughout the process. They understand what it is that they're sort of engaging in. It's just it's very important to sort of be careful and inform users properly.
And just to add on to that, Brady, like what we were discussing yesterday, like as builders, the approach that we are taking is to go out with not minimal, but a simple feature set. So we want to keep things simple and standard. So we are taking the Aave protocol, which has been battle tested. We are not saying it's unhackable, but it has been proven in the last few years that it's quite safe and the best in the industry. So we are going with Aave. We are not changing it much. We are not adding any additional bells and whistles. It's like the approach we are taking is like Apple and iPhone, right? So you go out with a limited feature set, do it well, and then you can add on top of that. So we are going out with something that just works very well and which is safe. Yeah.
Gotcha. That makes sense. And it sounds like too, it's, and I like the answer you guys are giving where it's like, well, actually it is pretty risky. And these aren't necessarily misconceptions. They're valid concerns. And so I think that you guys, what I hear from you guys is really kind of taking, education and a connection to your community and customers as a mechanism for kind of like de-risking the platform. It's like there's a direct correlation between how informed your users are and how risky the platform is, because I think that a lot of risk comes from people just not knowing what they're doing. And I can guarantee you I'm somebody who's going to have no idea what they're doing. And so I think the testnet stuff is going to be great. And I think that now I want to take a bit of a dive into the platform itself. And there was one thing, I think a really interesting way to kind of, start unpacking this a little bit is like on the spaces that you guys did. I think you hit on something that is really an important aspect of Bonzo Finance, which is you guys are, building a protocol, right? You guys aren't necessarily like the end game for this isn't exactly like, oh, it's a website you go to and type in some stuff and borrow and lend. This is like, there's a layer deeper to this, which is like, we are developing a protocol and anyone can develop a front end for it. Anyone can utilize this protocol and whatever they want to do. And I wanted to see if we could kind of like, explore that a little more and kind of from a product standpoint, what does that mean for the ecosystem, right? Like, I mean, if you have a protocol, does that mean like any wallet or any DEX or any DApp on Hedera through utilizing your protocol can offer borrowing and lending inside of their DApp? I was just curious to kind of expand on that a little more.
Yeah, it's a great question and something that we've been thinking a lot about in terms of the protocol being an open source permissionless protocol that anyone can incorporate into their existing application or build a front end for. And we're really looking at it as we're building the Bonzo Finance ecosystem and creating an ecosystem around Bonzo Finance. And so One example, like you said, you can take the functionality at the protocol level of lending and borrowing, and you can bring that into the experience of a new or existing application. So just like how Hashpack, for example, incorporated token swaps, they took Saucer Swap and brought that into their experience. They too, not saying they will, obviously something that we'd be curious to explore, but bringing lending and borrowing functionality into Saucer Swap, or if someone wanted to create a different front end for Bonzo Finance and offer that to users and maybe take a small fee for providing that front end functionality, they absolutely can and should and are encouraged to do that. And then there's also, when you look at Aave as an ecosystem on other networks like Ethereum, we anticipate, other unique, innovative types of applications to be built on Bonzo Finance. Like one of the ones that was super interesting was a game called Aave Gachi, where they utilized collateral and debt tokens as part of a interactive game called Aave Gachi that they created, where there's some utility with those tokens in that gaming experience. And so we're excited to explore sort of what types of unique and interesting and new applications can be built based on the Aave protocol and within the Bonzo Finance ecosystem on Hedera. So things like hackathons, we anticipate, doing hackathons or doing developer workshops. And then, in addition to just the protocol itself and the functionality there sort of being utilized for these other applications that want to plug into it, there's also an ecosystem around liquidations. So as Gaurang had mentioned earlier, if collateral, let's say if a token that you borrow drops below a certain price and all of a sudden you don't have enough collateral to retain the borrow that you've created, a liquidation takes place. Essentially, the collateral that you have deposited has to be liquidated and then used to pay off people who are lenders in that assets pool. And there are bots called liquidation bots. We're in the process of building those and testing them out and ensuring the right functionality. We will likely be operating one of them as well. But the thing is anybody in the ecosystem can operate a liquidation bot. And when you sort of perform that, you're looking for those opportunities where liquidations are taking place. And as an operator of liquidation bots, you actually get the benefit of a fee for performing that action. So, we anticipate many users in the ecosystem being able to set up their own bots, helping ensure the sort of protection of the protocol by performing that liquidation bot function, and also earn rewards for participating in that way. So we see that as a big opportunity as well. And then a final thing too is there is this concept called flash loans.
Right.
And flash loans are the ability to, in a single transaction, be able to borrow assets from the protocol and pay those assets back. And in the midst of that, perform some type of financial transaction with the assets that you've borrowed. And you can do all this without actually providing collateral. So you could program a flash loan to, let's say there's a price discrepancy between an asset on HeliSwap and Saucer Swap. And again, disclaimer, not financial advice. This is just an example. But let's say you want to sort of take advantage of that price discrepancy between those two decentralized exchanges. You can borrow the asset that has the price discrepancy. And again, all within a single transaction. Borrow, perform swaps, and help support a more efficient market on Hedera for that asset, while at the same time earning a profit on that price discrepancy. And you would want to do so ideally with a larger amount of an asset, because the profit that you would gain from that is greater when you can leverage larger amounts of it. So, there's a number of different front-end applications that exist in other ecosystems where they integrate, the functionality of Aave to create graphical user interfaces to easily configure flash loans. Today, especially when we first launch, it's going to be people who are developers who are familiar with smart contracts who can build a flash loan, and we'll provide sort of modular tools to be able to allow someone who's a developer to go and do that. But in the future, wanting to integrate with those graphical user interfaces to make it even easier to access that flash loan functionality for the everyday user, whether that's an institution or also just retail individuals. But we see that as being very powerful. And then, with that, there's a fee associated with it. And so when you talk about sustainable economic protocol, where Bonzo needs to generate sort of its own revenue. And so for that type of transaction, there's revenue that is generated for someone who's taking advantage of that.
Right on.
No, that's a great answer, Brady. Like, just to add on to like what I think is, like, we are just enablers. Like for us, it's our whole ethos is about being open source, being collaborative, being part of the ecosystem and growing the ecosystem together, as I said earlier, right? And with Bonzo, with the protocol, we are just beginning this, and we are starting this, right? And then we want to decentralize this like as soon as possible. So in the roadmap, we have multiple steps, and having a DAO which kind of owns the protocol, takes care of the protocol. That's like one of the in the near future that's going to happen. We want to enable that, and then we want the ecosystem to grow around this. We want the community to actually make decisions how to grow this ecosystem. What we are here to do is to just ignite that flame, ignite that spark, and then we sit back and we see how it how it grows into a big tree.
Very cool. So a couple more questions. And I think that one thing that I found very interesting from your spaces that you touched on as well is you specifically mention, the treasuries that certain projects have or investors have. And right now that value just kind of being locked up in an account somewhere. And in an ecosystem right now where I think a lot of projects, retail projects could be struggling for funds or what have you, like in Hedera and outside of Hedera, just because of the way that the market's been over the last year or so. On Hedera, we haven't had that extra headroom or that ability to access that kind of liquidity. And a good example would be, maybe there's some token lockups, or maybe, a project on Hedera has a ton of HBAR that they just can't really touch. Because they can't sell it and it can't really be put to work in certain ways. So you guys touched on that and made it clear that, the addition of borrowing and lending would allow a lot of these projects to start to access that value, start to really put those assets that they have to work without necessarily having to spend them. And so I kind of was curious, like maybe expanding on that a little more, and maybe what kind of impact you think that may have on the ecosystem at large in Hedera, maybe like a more of a stimulating effect. I don't know what you're envisioning, but yeah, maybe touching on that a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. So yes, you're right. With regards to token-based projects, there is inaccessible liquidity. Large maybe token holders or investors, team members, treasuries that have tokens that are being held that for whatever reason, maybe restrictions on sales or otherwise, they can't access that liquidity. And with Bonzo Finance, you're in a situation where you can provide that liquidity. You can earn interest and fees for providing that. And there's, unlike a DEX, maybe there's no sort of possibility of impermanent loss associated with the functionality that exists on Bonzo Finance. So like from that sort of narrow perspective, it's sort of less risky than maybe providing that to a DEX. And so what we anticipate is that this could allow for greater liquidity of some of these tokens and token-based projects that previously was not accessible to the ecosystem. And it makes it available for other people to borrow and then do things like and again, not financial advice in any way, but supply to saucer swap liquidity pools and earn sort of yield on that, while at the same time boosting the liquidity of that asset in the ecosystem and creating more efficient markets. We see that as being a huge benefit to the DeFi ecosystem. In doing so, you're also helping support the trading volume that exists on Hedera's DeFi ecosystem. And trading volume is a sort of Web3 wide metric that's being tracked across other DeFi ecosystems, as we saw from the Masari report recently for Hedera. And then a big one that we're focused on, we know that this very much so aligns with the sentiment of the community, as well as the objectives of HBAR Foundation and other folks as well, but USDC liquidity, stablecoin liquidity. So, Hedera doesn't have the most sort of liquidity of USDC. And we think that this is a really great opportunity to boost the liquidity of USDC in the Hedera ecosystem. If you look at, and we were just looking at this today, other protocols in lending and borrowing across other Web3 networks, specifically stable coins, if you look at the utilization rate of stable coins in those lending protocols, or in other words, sort of the amount that is being borrowed against the total amount that exists in the protocol, utilization rates are incredibly high, 90%, 80 to 90%. And so we think that with Bonzo Finance in place for the Hedera DeFi ecosystem, there is an incredible opportunity to boost the native USDC liquidity in the ecosystem. And in doing so, you open up greater opportunities for USDC to potentially be listed on centralized exchanges, to essentially position to maybe Circle to incorporate Hedera USDC into their TTCP offering that allows you to convert USDC across different chains easily. So, not saying that it's going to immediately change things, but a big reason for sort of that's preventing those things from taking place is sort of just the liquidity of USDC and also the utilization of it. And if we can boost that, then we're contributing back a lot to the DeFi ecosystem on Hedera and helping support on that front as well. And Gaurang may have more to add there too.
Yep. So Brady, I think you touched on two really amazing use cases, and just to add to that, one more really great use case is this. So now I'm literally I have Aave open on my laptop right now, and I'm looking at their different chains. So on the Ethereum chain, on the Arbitrum chain, and on some Polygon chain, for example. What's the most supplied asset on Aave?
What?
It's staked Ether. So on Hedera, we have a great opportunity with HBAR. So what people are doing essentially is they stake their Ether on Lido or Rocket Pool or something, right? And then they take that staked Ether. They get in return they get this WS staked Ether token, and they deposit this on Aave. Right now, against this staked Ether token, they can again borrow their Ether. So what that means is that they get liquidity and they get access to their Ether again. And this is a really great use case if you think about it, right? So you're getting back your HBAR in a way, and you're getting yield on your HBAR, and you're getting a few other things. So yeah, that's another great use case.
Love it. And I know we're getting up to the hour here, so I got a bunch of news to do, and I know you guys are very busy. So I wanted to just wind it up with a couple last questions. I guess for me. Correct me if I'm wrong, based on the spaces that you did, you've got a targeted kind of launch for mainnet for like July this year. And so maybe curious for you guys, like just illustrating what are some kind of milestones along the way to that? Like what are some things that the community and the ecosystem are going to be able to look forward to as you guys get closer to mainnet launch?
Yep. Again, don't hold us onto this. These dates are subject to change.
Not
Please.
financial advice.
Yeah, no financial advice, no exact dates. But yeah, by in like let's say a month or like 4 to 5 weeks, we want to launch the testnet public version, and I think we're pretty confident we could do that. Main thing we're working on is like the final design things on that. So we want to do the testnet launch, and then we have a few more things on the horizon. I don't know if we can talk about that very legally, but yeah, like testnet launch is like a main thing. Like, see, we will have points systems, and we'll have other things. We'll have the DAO on the roadmap again. But for us, like definitely the main thing is to get the community involved, get them to use the testnet. So like that's a major milestone for us. Like let's say 4 to 5 weeks from.
Gotcha. That's exciting. And maybe to throw it to you, Brady, as Gaurang said, like maybe there's some, there's some alpha. This is just a couple friends chatting. So feel free to divulge. Otherwise, no pressure. But yeah, from your side, yeah, what can we look forward to from Bonzo as you guys get ready for a mainnet launch?
Yeah, absolutely. No, I think Goran covered sort of the focus. We want to stay hyper focused on ensuring the best experience for users and also educating them along the way and keeping everybody very up to date. So the testnet launch is going to be a really important part of that. We want to ensure that experience is squared away and give people the opportunity to experience the protocol and what it will be like on mainnet, sort of performing these types of transactions in real life, sort of with real assets, and again, education. Really wanting to help support and educate everybody in the ecosystem is just such a critical part of what we're doing, and being there to help answer questions. Let me think. Yeah.
Good stuff.
Yeah. Otherwise,
Just one alpha, as we have some exciting things coming up in June and July.
Okay. Any hints? Any hints, guys?
Uh, let's see. We can't say anything about it right now. We are just going through the legal process. So the lawyers are like, stay mum on this.
Gotcha. I totally respect that. I was going to say too, before I let you guys go, Brady, you brought up, karate combat as an example of a project with a token and those different types of things. Kind of unrelated, just as I transition to the rest of the show. But did you guys see the news that Karate Combat posted that May from Hashpack is going to be fighting in the next Karate Combat at Consensus?
We did. I just shared that in our team Slack. Yeah. Actually, we're so excited about that. It's so cool. And yeah, I was saying, like, I know where my karate tokens are going to be placed for that fight, but it's great to see her participating in that. So excited.
Yeah, I gotta say, I wish Bonzo Finance was around right now so I could do some kind of crazy loan and throw it all on May for this fight. That's one thing that I was hoping, but we'll have to wait till next time. Hopefully Maida's around too. But with that, like, really appreciate you guys coming on, following along. Obviously, Brady, you've had a big journey in this space. There's a new chapter, and then Gaurang, it's awesome to have you in the community. It's great to meet you. So welcome on the show anytime. But yeah, great chatting with you guys. If there's anything else you guys want to mention before I boot you off to get on with the news here, feel free. Call to action for the community or anything like that.
No, yeah, really appreciate you having us. Yeah, this was great. I'm always happy to join, and we're excited to keep providing updates as things progress. We do have our Discord that's live, and we've been engaging the community pretty heavily in there. So you can access that at bonzo.finance/Discord is the invitation to join. And then follow us on the Bonzo Finance Twitter handle, so at Bonzo_finance, and we continue to do educational postings and development updates and things of that nature. So definitely one of the best ways to try and keep in touch on progress. But we really appreciate you having us, and then also just everybody in the community who's joined and is interested in learning about what we're building.
Right on.
And yeah, we have our weekly Twitter Spaces tomorrow, Thursday. So please join us there. I'll see you guys there tomorrow. Yeah.
Right
okay,
on.
bye.
Okay, thanks so much, guys. You take care. Okay.
Thanks so much.
So let's dive into it here. I got some stuff that I want to dive into. Bonzo Finance, like, super cool. I'm stoked about that. Again, I'm fresh to the kind of, borrowing and lending Web3 kind of stuff. So, very fortunate to be in a position to ask these stupid questions and get some answers. So really appreciate those guys. Yeah. And also curious to hear everyone's thoughts on kind of borrowing and lending in the ecosystem, kind of what could be happening with it. So stoked about that. Real quick, just before I continue on, huge shout out to supporters of the show. Supporting the show is really easy. You send HBAR to an address that I sell the HBAR and buy equipment for the show and subscriptions and all that kind of stuff. So it wouldn't be possible without contributors to the show. The address to send a contribution, the Hedera address is in the thread pinned to the top of the spaces. And if you're watching the video, it is on the screen. Call now, while supplies last. But yeah, seriously, couldn't do without you guys. And, I'm really happy to have a show that is not sponsored and there's no ads, and I can shit talk anybody that I like. And, have great guests on, and just, I have a lot of fun doing this show. So I really, really appreciate all the support